This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradu.
Are you freaking serious? It's Conrado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado. On this episode of the podcast, we have got Herman Brune. This guy, he's pretty interesting, I will tell you. He did start talking before we were ready to go, and it was like, you know what? We're just going to let him go. So it starts a little abrupt, but he's a true historian. He's a very well-educated man. He's spent a lot of time at Texas A&M. He's produced books. He's just, I mean, it's amazing how much information he knows. He's guided hunts in Wyoming, in Montana. You know, he just has a knowledge of history, and not to mention his books are actually truly excellent, and they're available on sale at Amazon right now. But it's kind of a change up, right? What we do on The Gauge, it's always diverse. It's always different. This episode is very different, I will tell you. It's very different. We enjoyed it. We feel like we learned a lot from him. Highly educated man. Likes the Crown Royal, as you'll find out. But it is a truly fun episode, and it's a real change up from what we normally do. So check it out.
Somebody over there, they said, well, you know, we're in a meeting in Cheyenne. Somebody brought your name up, and then they said something about your book, and then somebody had it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, that's always nice to know that it gets around.
Yeah, well, isn't that the goal?
So, yeah, I mean, that's what you want, you know. That's what you want. But it's just been it's been a few years since I promoted all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's always interesting to me when
word of mouth travels slow sometimes.
Yeah, well, but I mean, there for a few years it was, you know, we really pushed the hell out of it.
Really?
And then I've been all over that country up there. Mm-hmm. So
hard to know who you talk to.
Yeah, it's not that surprising. I did a radio interview a while back so I have a radio show.
Yeah.
I did a radio show a while back with Christy Craddock. She's chairman of the Texas Railroad Commission. Mm. Does all the permitting for oil and gas in Texas.
Yeah.
And this has been a few years ago. I went in. I was trying to be polite. Went in. Of course, I knew Christy before she was on the Railroad Commission. I don't know if she knew that or not. But, so I went in, and I gave her my books, and she just looked at them and went, well, I have these. And I said, really? And she goes, well,
you know, we should probably mic up. He's telling some good stories.
My dad does.
Yeah. Pop those babies on and let's get it started. This is good stuff.
I said, oh, okay. Well, she was talking about her dad when he was Speaker of the House.
Yeah. And
so, you know, he had those books. And, you know, that stuff just always makes you feel good.
Speaker of the House reading your books, I mean, how could it not?
Well, you know, that's the good thing.
Yep.
That's the good thing, because Texas always had the Sportsman's Caucus in the state legislature. It was the largest bipartisan caucus in the Texas legislature. You will see a lot of these guys, if you go to the Austin Woods and Waters luncheons, you'll see a lot of these guys from the Texas legislature there. You see a lot of the businessmen around Austin. You see all these guys. And Speaker Craddock was always there, mm-hmm. Along with I'll tell you who was the big Texas outdoor writer is John Jefferson. And he's the guy, you know, when you go to Walmart and you get those little books that have all the rules and regulations for Texas Parks and Wildlife hunting and fishing.
Yeah, I mean, in every state it's a little orange book.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Well, okay. Well, John Jefferson edits that. He's the guy who does that. And they would have these Austin Woods and Waters. It was a club.
Right.
And I'm assuming that's where Speaker Craddock got my books.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I went over there and I did a speaking engagement, and I sold a few books and signed them. And then whenever it came time that years later, I turned around and I interviewed Christy, Speaker Craddock's daughter, and I went to give her just being polite, wanted to give her my books and introduce myself when we did the radio interview. And she looked at the books and goes, well, my daddy has these books. I've read them. And I go, well, okay, well, now I got you on, you know.
Yeah.
And then we go on and we talk about, you know, oil and gas industry in Texas, and we talk about wildlife, and we talk about the outdoors, and you know, that's kind of how my radio program swings. It's you know, we'll do everything on a radio program from you know, what bullets work good, what bait works good, what's going on the Texas Gulf Coast. We'll also get into environmental issues, and then we'll always ask questions. Well, how does this really work? You know, I want to know. I've always wanted to know how the world works. You know, I get real tired of people blaming other people when something happens, and I'm going, oh, no, wait a minute. There's oversight. There's supposed to be some oversight over some of this stuff. You know, we're watching that Kinder Morgan pipeline come through the hill country, and you wonder, well, now whose bright idea was that? And you know it had to be permitted by the Railroad Commission. All right, so they get off in the hill country. Sure enough, just like everybody told them, all the green advocates out in the hill country were telling them something bad will happen. Well, sure enough, it did. Okay, so from a true journalist position, all right, now this time give the green advocates a point, because they knew something bad would happen, and it's happened a couple of times. Okay, so now my next question is, who has oversight? Is it the Railroad Commission? Is it the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality, TCEQ? Is it Texas Parks and Wildlife? Who has oversight over this? Who makes certain that all the environmental needs are met as this pipeline goes through? You know, somebody has to. Where's the EPA? You know, I don't like to ever see the feds in Texas. That's the last thing we want, is having the federal government come into Texas and start doing things and throwing their weight around. You know, it's like they say nowadays with this popular TV show, we need to take those boys to the train station, as far as the feds are concerned. But, you know, who has oversight? Who actually has control? There's a lot of stuff that goes on around Texas. When you look at the Texas Gulf Coast, when you look at the refineries, when you look at everything that goes on in this world, we're doing a pretty good job. We're doing a really good job. The Texas Gulf Coast is billions and billions and billions. I don't know how many billions of dollars of industry happens on the Texas Gulf Coast. It is also a major factor in national security when we're talking about energy and we're talking about oil and gas industry. And then go out and look at the recreational fishing, the oysters, the shrimping, the commercial, you know, everything that goes on in the Texas waters.
Well, I mean, Houston is what? They're in the top 10 for commerce in the entire world.
Right.
So,
okay, so you would not have all this if the oil and gas industry had not become environmentally friendly. And this would just fly all up in the face of you know, certain people who are against the oil and gas industry. But, okay, I'll give you okay, you guys here, y'all are producing this thing. Y'all are both younger than me. When I was a kid, everything went out the car window. Cigarette butts, everybody smoked back in. Cigarette butts, the packages, your
no one knew it had the
drink,
health issues that it causes.
Well, okay, the cigarette smoke, that's not my point. My point is littering. Everybody, and people have a hard time imagining that today, because used to be everybody just do everything out the car window. All right? Lady Bird Johnson came along, and you had Beautify America. All right? You go years on down, and we start hearing this messaging that littering is not good. We need to quit this. All right? So this was a social change that happened in my lifetime. we taught people to stop littering. All right. In the same period of time, industry, manufacturing, industry, everybody involved started becoming environmentally aware. They started looking at the air, they started looking at the water, they started looking at the soil, they started looking at all the things in nature, and they said, you know what, guys, we got to clean up our act. We have to do this. They don't get credit for it. Over the last 60 years, they don't get credit for it. And that's wrong. And it's wrong when media goes out on these campaigns and they'll say, okay, I'll give you one. Anti-fracking.
I'm from Colorado. It's a humongous
Fracking,
agenda that's pushed in Colorado is stop fracking.
Fracking was debunked 20 years ago. If you do it correctly, which they are absolutely working, fracking has no impact on groundwater corruption. I did radio interviews in Wyoming and picked up the stuff in Texas, as well as got information from other writers in Pennsylvania, where Obama's EPA administration went out and did studies on the fracking's correlation to groundwater corruption, and in all three of those states, they could not prove that fracking had any impact on groundwater. That is one of those things where people say it often enough, they think it's true. And it's not. It's not. When it's done correctly, now, okay, I'm going to give you 60 years ago, 50 years ago, that's how long fracking has actually been around.
Right.
There could have been, I'm sure there was, instances of, problems. I'll give you another one. I wrote a magazine article one time where someone took an old producing oil well, turned it into a water well, fracked it themselves, knew enough how to do it. These some old oil field guys knew enough how to do it, got down into the Carrizo Aquifer, brought it up, mingled it with substratus, and then started producing water from the Carrizo Aquifer. And I wrote an article about it because these guys were watering hayfields, they were filling stock ponds, they were doing all kinds of stuff, and all their neighbors were saying how their water changed. Well, okay, all that stuff's illegal, and you cannot intermingle aquifer levels. You can't take the Carrizo Aquifer and mingle that water. They had fracked an old gas well, old water oil well, and they had fracked it at different levels, and they started producing water. It was plugged down around 9,000 feet. Mm-hmm. All right, it was plugged. But they came up, they plugged it at about 2,000, and they started fracking the water stratas and taking the water out. Okay? That's how you have mistakes. All right? You don't let people do that. In the oil patch, they don't make these mistakes because it's not legal.
Well, not in modern, yeah. I mean,
right.
Everything,
in modern ages, this isn't legal. So when we caught these guys doing this in Fayette County, we pointed it out. I published it,
right?
And they had to quit. All right. And
now, how long ago was that, though?
But yeah, where are we at? 2020. That was 10, 12 years ago.
So this is. So now when you drill a well, you've got to have a separator, and you have to have everybody who drills one has to have a dedicated disposal well for the water, right? Does that have something to do with that?
Okay. When you got your frack water, it comes back. That's all of that stuff. Okay. Here's another deal. I went to the separation science seminars at Texas A&M for, 8 or 10 years. And every year I'd go to these separation science seminars. They can take that stuff and turn it back into drinking water and turn around and take the solid substances with a little bit of whatever's left and go put it down re-injection wells.
Yeah.
They can take that frack water and turn it back into drinking water. In fact, Wyoming was allowing them to reintroduce water back into surface water because, they shoot it back in the creek because we have the technology to clean that stuff up. All right, let me tell you what that means in something you can understand. Right now, this stuff right here, that ice in my drink, comes from toilet to tap.
Well, yeah, you've got water treatment facilities in every major town and city in the United States.
Right. It goes right through, goes through your toilet, gets flushed, goes through your sink, goes into water containment, goes through water process technologies, turns right around, comes back through your faucet. And Lord knows how many times some of these cities have the capabilities, the technology, everything. It's called toilet to tap. They can clean that water up to where, it's completely good.
About everywhere but Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on up there. And I should also point out one of the things that they found, they found this ages ago, was that they got carried away with cleaning up their water. And I think it was in the Gulf Coast where one of the plants was letting water go, and they noticed a dead zone, and they went out and looked at it. And the water that they were putting into the Gulf was too pure. Nothing could live in it. There was no nutrients. So they had to take some Gulf water and see what was in it, and then try to match it with what they, whatever they were producing, they try to match it. Because we have the technology to just take anything and turn it into 100% pure water. I was always an advocate for desal, and of course it's cost prohibitive. Texas, you look at all the people who are coming to Texas, and Texas has historically always had a shortage of water. Okay? So then you look at East Texas and the Trinity River Basin, and you go, wow, they got plenty. And then you look over and you got the Colorado, and you go, well, those people are doing pretty good. And then you got the Brazos, and you go, well, they're doing all right. And then you go on down and you start getting further west, and you get off towards the Pecos and some of that dry country. And, well, you get over around San Antonio and Guadalupe, and you see how some of that gets to be pretty dry sometimes. And especially, when you've got a big municipal area like San Antonio, and was one of the fastest growing cities for a while, and they needed more water. The Edwards Aquifer just wasn't keeping up with them, which it wasn't. But, they were reaching out all over the state looking for fresh water. So we're going, why don't you just go to the Gulf of Mexico and desal some? And they would say, well, it's cost prohibitive. It takes too much energy to desalinate that much water. Dadgummit, they've been doing it over in Saudi Arabia and
most of the Middle East.
They've been doing it over there forever. And so, okay, let me give you a little clue here. I'm an old laggy, and I've got buddies who have been in this industry now. We've all been in this stuff for 40 years. And I've got a buddy right now that's over there in Qatar. And he's working with them, and I called him the other day when we visited for a little while, and I said, well, how's it going? And he's going, all right. I said, okay, so what's the deal with desal over there? He goes, well, they've been desaling the Persian Gulf forever and ever. Let me give you another thing. Persian Gulf's damn near like Salt Lake.
Yeah.
All right. But it does have some marine life in it. For as salty as it is, it has marine life in it. Okay. This thing gets so damn intertwined because I can make so many different points with one story. One of the things about desalination that you will always hear is what happens to the supersaturated concentrate after you've desalinated a unit of water, and you've taken all the salt out of it. Then what do you do with this concentrate? What do you do with it? Okay. All right. So I didn't know. first time when I was studying desal, or not studying it, I wasn't smart enough to study it, but first time I was investigating it, looking at it, wondering about it, thinking about it, and asking these questions with my radio program. And I had a gentleman sit. At the time, he was the executive director of the Blanco Guadalupe River Authority. And he asked me that question, what do you do with the supersaturated concentrate? And I was like, hell, I don't know. Well, he left me with that question, okay? So when you're interviewing someone and you're trying to get answers, if you're left with a question and they make you look stupid at the end of an interview, that's not really the way you want to end an interview, okay? So this guy kind of pissed me off, all right? And I circled around, I walked in circles and kicked rocks and chewed on that for a while because that's what he did at the end of the interview, and I was trying to get pertinent information. And at the end of the interview, he kind of left me with that, well, what do you do with this? And I was like, hell, I don't know. And that's the way the whole interview ended. And I wanted answers. When I interview somebody and I'm trying to say, I want answers. I don't want to be left with a question and standing there looking like I don't know anything. Lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, I was talking to my old buddy, assistant squad leader, when we was in the Corps at A&M. And he goes, oh, well, hell, I'll tell you what to do with it. And I went, what? He says, you build a 7-mile pipeline back off out in the Gulf. He said, you run it solid for about 3 miles. He said, in the last 4 miles, every 10 foot, you put a 4-inch diffuser. He says, 7 miles, 42-inch pipeline. This is the way you do it. He says, you can pump 1 million to 1.2 barrels of supersaturated concentrate back into the Gulf every day with no environmental impact. Well, how in the hell do you know that? He said, I did it. I said, when? He said, 88 to 92, when I built the Big Hill Oil Reserve. He said, we built the strategic oil reserves that we have now that would, so that the United States always has oil. And he said, we drilled out that salt dome. We pumped fresh water into it. We, took the supersat. He said, water will only hold so much salt. And when you pump it back out into the Gulf, he said, once it leaves that plume,
it disperses.
It immediately disperses, and you've got seawater. He said, we had EPA people, we had divers out there. He said, we did this for how many years? He said, you could go right down beside the pipe at the floor, ocean floor, Gulf floor, and he said you had fresh seawater. You had regular seawater. He said all you had to do was get outside that plume, and you had regular seawater. It dispersed immediately. He said, he said, okay, now through the years we've talked more about this, and he said, well, for one thing, Gulf of Mexico is open to the Atlantic. We also have all these rivers that run into it. And he said one of the reasons the Persian Gulf is so saline, is so salty, he said there's very few rivers that run into it, and it's very close. There's only one narrow strait that takes it out into the ocean. And he said, so it is very salty. And he said, if you look at what the media tells you, they'll tell you that all this desal over in those countries has raised the salinity of the Persian Gulf. I question that, and
you have to wonder though, right? Like, is it actually possible for us to impact a body of water like that big? I mean, even if you're putting in 1 billion gallons a day, could you actually?
He said he was putting in 1 million to 1.2 million
per day
barrels.
Yeah,
a day. So that's more.
60 gallons in a barrel, or what
55.
is it? 55. Yep.
Right, or 52. But anyhow, and it did not have an environmental impact on the Gulf of Mexico. All right. It's only been a few years ago a prototype was suggested at San Diego. All right. The green environmentalists got it stopped because of, according to a Reuters article, because of the environmental impact of the supersaturated discharge. And this was into the Pacific Ocean. So it's not real. You know this isn't real. We've already done it in the Gulf of Mexico. And when I interviewed Christy Craddock, I told her, we just offhanded started talking about this. And I said, well, this is what we did. And, what do you do with supersaturated concentrate? And she said, well, we don't know. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we don't know. We've never done it. And I said, Christy, you did. See, now she's a little younger. And I said, Christy, you did. And she goes, no, we've never done that. I said, Christy, you did. I said, from 88 to 92, that's what we did with no environmental impact. And I said, we've done this. There's everything. Okay. Now, you want me to really get deep on you?
At some point, we should get into the Western stuff.
Yeah, all right. This is the Western stuff, though.
I
mean, because
it's
it's Texas, and it's not just Texas. This goes everywhere. I'm of the opinion that whether you're talking about the national economy, the state economy, the environment, whether you're talking about forest management, grasslands management, any of those things. We've been a country for 250 years. The wildlife, the North American model of wildlife conservation has been in effect since the 1930s. We learned after the Great Depression how economies work and how they don't work. We know the rules. We know how to do these things.
Well, some of us do. You can tell right now in 2020 there's an entire group of people who have no idea.
Because somebody else wants control. That's all it is.
Isn't it funny, like that they're not even hiding it anymore?
But how many people don't even understand it? Don't understand that's what it is. That, we know that you need to, when it comes to forests, you log them, you graze them, or watch them burn. And that's what we're seeing all over California. That's
happening in Colorado right now.
We're seeing that everywhere. And we know how to manage. We know how to manage our wildlands. We know how to manage our water. We know how to manage all these things. And we know how economies work. We know all this stuff. The numbers are there. All you have to do is want to do it right. And it's not getting done because somebody else wants to control and because people don't care. Your
average American does not care because, that's the one thing that's really interesting. And I think even Ty, you probably agree with this, that life is so comfortable the way it is. Mm-hmm. You don't even have to educate yourself on the things that you're telling us. You just don't. There's no reason. Like, if you look at it from your generic human being, right? Like in 2020, your generic American, the guy on the next street over living in his house. What benefit does he have outside of expanding his knowledge, like in his day-to-day life, to know any of this stuff? If you were to ask him. Yeah. Right?
I don't.
Which is dangerous.
It
severely dangerous.
I try to believe in people. I try like hell to believe in people. And I don't want to sit around and say that I'm disappointed, but because there's so many good people. I come in contact with so many good people all the time, but it is a little bit, it is disconcerting. It's been quite a few times I've come down out of the mountains and I looked around and I just turned around and want to go back, we're like, holy mackerel, what the hell's going on here? What's wrong with everybody? I can't imagine why they're doing the things they're doing. We're in the middle of one of those things right now, and we probably ought to leave it alone.
Well, so here's what's nice about this show. You're pandering to your audience. So there's, it's not when you have a show that's premise is inside the Western lifestyle, you're talking to a certain demographic of people. So I wouldn't worry too much about saying what you feel.
Well, yeah. Well, you boys know I don't own a mask. And the first time I walked in the building and saw everybody wearing masks, I went back out to the truck and got my gun. And walked back in and bought what I wanted. I went, good Lord, these people.
Was it surprising to you that Texas did the mask mandate? You talk so specific about the state of Texas, right? You do. You speak very plainly about Texas. It's almost, it's a good old boy mentality of the state, right? I mean, there's pockets of the state that are a lot different. And when you see a mandate like, hey, everybody in this entire state is going to wear a mask in every single building they go in, does that shift your mentality a little bit?
Tell you what I'm saying is they can mandate, do what they want to do. I'm here. We're in Fort Worth right now. I've been spent last weekend down in Rockport with the Chamber of Commerce doing some stuff there. And, of course, I live in a small town. And I have snuck into Houston one time and done some business over there. And I see the same thing everywhere. People are walking around with them on because they have to have them on. I'll take a wild rag and wear it like a bandit scarf, and then just let it drop, and then turn it all the way around and just forget about it. And I don't see anybody that really, really, really believes in this until I go sit in a city council meeting or go talk to a county judge. And I don't really believe in it either, but they're looking for a leader. That is what I keep seeing. I keep seeing everybody looking for a leader to get us out of this. And they can't. Here's the problem. We believe in Trump, but he knows that with this type of deal, this really has to go down to local control.
Well, and you're saying something really interesting, right? Because if you talk to the majority of people, they don't actually understand how our constitutional republic functions. Mm-hmm. It's funny, I was having a conversation with somebody about this today, and Trump can't do anything. I've had people ask me, well, why doesn't real far-right people who, they're basically the polar opposite of the left that we're dealing with, who's ripping up cities, same type of uneducated mentality, just on the opposite side, right? And why didn't he just send the military in there to set them up? Because that's not how our country's set up. Things have to happen at a local level, at a county level, at a state level. You want to affect change, talk to your city council, talk to your county commissioner.
That's and I'm seeing that. And I'm also seeing people that are coming up from the grassroots and just going, you know what, we ain't doing this no more.
Yeah.
And then the city council and county judges and commissioners and whatnot, they'll sit there and nod, and go, yeah, okay. And then I look at the county judge, I said, well, take that damn mandate off your courthouse. Is that not your courthouse? Does that not belong to you? When we elected you, did we not give you that courthouse? That's your courthouse. You tell them where to stick it and tell them we ain't wearing masks in this county. All right. Now, what happened? They have to be careful how they do that because they're looking for money from the state.
Funding dictates all.
Yeah.
That's the smaller the county, the more they require that funding.
All right. So, and what do I tell them? I tell them, have you ever read Elmer Kelton's book, The Time It Never Rained? It's about the drought back in the 50s. And them old West Texas ranchers told the federal government, just go stick it. We don't want your money. We're either going to live or we're going to die. That's it. That's what we need to do right now. Tell them just go stick it. We do not want your money. We don't want our money back. All that money I gave you for the last 40 years I was working, just keep it. Now, all I want you to do is leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, due to the size of populations and the amount of funding that they get for schools, roads, agendas, that's a beautiful sentiment.
There's so many things we need that we do now just because, it's just because it's not, I'm sentimental. I pull up stories that I listened to when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, listening to my grandma, listening to her brother, listening to all the old people that I just sat there and just suck that stuff up when I was a little kid. And, I paid enough attention to understand how some things worked, how out in some of these rural counties, everyone had responsibility over the road in front of their house. If a road went through your property, you were responsible for that section.
Still
of the
that
road.
way in some rural places,
right?
Yeah.
And if you go down to Mexico, that's the way it's down in Mexico. You got the callejones, your ranch roads down there, and the different ranchers are supposed to take care of their own section of the roads. Well, that's the way it used to be. In my radio show, in the last 20 years, I had a lady on who explained to me what the country looked like before the state highways were here. And it was great, man. It was a hoot. I had a blast talking to that lady, And, what did Texas look like before we had all the state highways and everyone was, self-reliant and dependent and self-dependent. And little by little, as the population increases, we've reached a point, and that is a very elemental example.
There's some places where it's even more dramatic. Like Colorado is one of those brilliant ones. Eisenhower, right? The running Interstate I-70 and doing the Eisenhower Tunnel through that. That's a very rural area. Mm-hmm. And when I mentioned there's a county there where my grandmother lives called Garfield County, and they have to maintain their road, and that's what I know about that. So That's where the reference came from. But
it's a lot of fun. It's it's a lot of fun to know history. Okay, let me explain this also. Me personally, I did not start writing until I was about 40 years old. It was a trick. It was a gimmick. I read so much when I was young.
And just, you grew up on the very homestead you live on?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was an adopted child. I was born in San Antonio. Oh, yeah, this is always something I like to brag about. I was born in San Antonio, don't really know anything about my ethnicity, so I can honestly say I'm 100% Texan, and I'm satisfied with that.
Well, you got the mustache for it.
If someone says, well, German, Czech, what are you? I'm going, Lord, no. I'm just 100% Texan. I was born in San Antonio. I don't know anything past that. And, and being in San Antonio, I tell them I was born in Shade of the Alamo. But, there's so much history there. You mentioned Eisenhower. When I started writing, it wasn't purely outdoor writing. It was a lot of just different types of articles. And that's such a great thing to do. I was already 40 years old, and I said it was a trick because when I was in school, writing was something I did just to get an A. And I did that all the way through high school and college and everything. Just writing was just an easy A. And then, but I was always, you had to pin me down to make me write something because I had to be outside. And it wasn't until I was 35 years old and I was packing mules. I was up in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. And I was so beat to pieces. I've been riding saddle broncs for how long? And by the time I was 35, hell, I'd been riding saddle broncs for a while and had my PRCA card. And then I was packing mules and I was living in the wilderness. And I was looking at it and I said, man, I'm living the life I love. I mean, you know, I'm up here in Charlie Russell country, up here amongst the Blackfeet and everybody else. And this is great. I'm right here in Choteau, Montana, you know, home of A.B. Guthrie and the Way West and all that stuff. And I went, this is just magnificent. This is perfect. But I'm living the lifestyle of someone at turn of the century, and turn of the century, and median age was 49. And at the time I was 35, and I started having my doubts that I was going to make it. And I said, I've got to go out and do something else. And I said, what in the hell else am I good at that I can use my head? You know, something that I'm good at. And I said, well, writing. So that's what I did. I went back to Texas A&M. I took all their journalism classes, and I started writing my little stories. And one of the things, now I wrote a lot of different stuff, but when you write for newspapers and you start getting assignments, one of the things I got to write about was the Austin County High School. And you made me think of it because you said something about Eisenhower. Eisenhower passed legislation. He was the greatest civil rights president we ever had.
You wouldn't say second greatest?
No, he was absolutely the greatest. I'll remind me and I'll explain that.
Of course, you know who I'm thinking of, naturally, for number one.
LBJ.
Well, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with that idea here in just a minute. Eisenhower was the greatest one. He went in, and the states followed the federal government, and so that every child had to have access to a high school education. Okay? I wrote an article about the Austin County High School because all the kids had access to an 8th grade education if they wanted it. Now, the Austin County High School in Austin County, Texas, was the black high school for once they got through their little rural community schools, they had a place to go get a high school education. That lasted until 67 when we had integration. Okay, now what you're thinking about is LBJ's Great Society and the civil rights movement of the 60s. Okay, that was a sleight of hand movement because LBJ was Alvin Wirtz. Alvin Wirtz was LBJ's mentor. Alvin Wirtz was a good friend of FDR. Okay, Alvin Wirtz is a person who was one of the main guys who created the Lower Colorado River Authority. FDR created Tennessee River Valley River Authority. It's much the same thing. I always say LCRA is Texas brand of socialism. Here's the deal. LBJ in the Texas State Senate voted twice to not let black folks vote in Democrat primaries. Okay?
How many people know that?
Very
few.
Yeah, very few. All right. Now here's a broader spectrum to look at. While integration went in 67, I think that's correct, in 67, you also had the Greater Society social programs come in. All right? What is a social program? What is it when you give something to someone based on race or gender?
Yeah, I mean, that's
That's racist, right?
Definitely racism, yeah.
All right.
Inequality.
So they integrated, they put everybody together, so everybody's equal, everybody's going to the same school, everybody's going to do the same thing, everybody's equal, we're all equal. They turned right around and resegregated people with social programs based on race and gender and created the welfare state. Okay, what do we have ever since then is identity politics.
Well, and what we're seeing is a complete and total degradation of that equality. I mean, now it's the other way around. They're asking for all black schools and things of that nature, and so it's a really interesting how the kind of the things have turned around.
It's okay. All right. Let me. I didn't learn. It's not like I grew up and somebody taught me this. This is all stuff that I've picked up through the years.
And you seem like the kind of guy that you go to pretty extensive lengths to make sure you're putting out the correct information. So I mean, we're learning from you.
It's a little bit of logic, and then just someone show me where I'm wrong. Okay, I was in a camp one time, and I was up in northwestern Montana, and there was something said about Indian reservations, okay? So we had a gentleman in camp who worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and he put it as simply as it could be put. He says, anytime you give something to one set of people based on race and the people right next to them don't get those benefits, he said, you're going to create division in a community. He said, that's it. He said, anytime you do that, that's what you get. He said, you can't give something to one set of people based on their color or creed and not turn around and give it to somebody else. He said, that's how come you have this divisiveness. This is how come you have racism. He said, that's what you have.
Don't you think they know that, and that's why they utilize that as such a tool today?
Well, you wonder. I mean, you kind of wonder about it. Is this, because there's, who exactly is pulling the strings? I mean, we're sitting down here on the grassroots level and we're going, this is obvious, this is the way it goes. But you go to academia or you go, off onto the left side of the spectrum, and these people are oblivious to this. They don't understand. I'm looking at it, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to lay it out real simple. Affirmative action, anytime you talk about diversity where you have to hire so many black folks, so many red folks, so many women, so many yellow folks, and you have to hire based on diversity, hate crimes. What is all this stuff? This stuff is all based on identity politics. And it's racism, it's misogyny, it's everything that divides people. If you want to treat people equal, then you don't create laws and regulations, restrictions, all this stuff based on
virtually all the social constructs we have in place now.
Yeah, you don't do that. You don't divide people and say, well, if a certain colored person does something to a certain other, it's a hate crime. And then the next time it happens flip-flop the other way, it's not, because of historical something or other. You don't do that. You treat everybody equal. Now, with having said that, let me make another point. I've been, you guys really got me going on politics here.
Is there anything more important?
I thought I was going to
right now?
I thought I was going to teach somebody how to pack mules or something. I've worked in so many different places, and I've never hired anybody or worked with anybody based on ethnicity or gender or any of those things. It never even came into my thinking. I look back on it and I'm thinking, okay, I can remember some of the jokes and some of the things we said, and some of that stuff is certainly not appropriate today, but at the time, no one took offense. No one took offense of it. It was just us just goofing around, and we all had fun. And I've never had a problem with people taking shots at me, because Lord knows I've got my fallacies. And, those people closest to me have no problem bringing them up every once in a while. And I just got to swallow it and go on. So it's no big deal. And all this stuff that divides people and keeps them divided and keeps everybody offended, I think we can get past that, but we're going to have to do it. And I'm really, I'm really a little bit concerned about how many people buy into so much of this crap. And just don't, they bought into it and have, what they always say, they drank the Kool-Aid. And that really bothers me. That really bothers me.
No one wants to form an informed opinion based on their own data. They just don't want to do it. It's so much easier to go to a Facebook or something like that, or even your nightly news, and it doesn't even matter what side of the fence you're on, right? I mean, you're going to drink whatever they're giving you. Because of the labor to go through and watch the other side, it's so gut-wrenching to do that because it doesn't speak directly to your set of beliefs that most people just can't.
No.
And so that's what creates these biases is, I don't think I'm saying the right thing.
Bias,
yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, that's what creates that. And it's so easy because human beings are so tribal in nature.
I suppose, and I suppose that's correct. And I was fortunate, I was fortunate that I read so much when I was a kid, and I grew up, reading so much about history and what went on and why things happened the way they did. And then I listened. When I was a little kid, and I asked questions. And I, when LBJ put Social Security into public funds, took it out of private trust and put it in public funds, that was in the 60s. And I remember my grandma was born in 1897, and her brother was sitting there, and my daddy was sitting there. My daddy was an accountant in a bank for 40 years, and I remember them talking about it. And I'm a little kid, and I'm sitting there listening to it, and I asked my mama, what in the hell are they fussing about so bad? And Mama said, she said, your grandma and her brother just really never liked FDR, and they don't like LBJ, and your daddy don't like LBJ, and they're talking about money and what's wrong. Okay. So I heard all this when I was a little kid. I was 10 years old, 9 years old, something like that. All right, move on down the road, and color me not very smart, because I turned around and went into the dairy business under a Jimmy Carter program. All right? Now, who in their right mind would give a kid that's 23 years old $250,000 to go into a business he's never been in, and, a kid that don't have but one thing, well, two things on his mind, one of them saddle broncs, and give him that money and tell him to go in business? That's exactly what happened. I went in, I borrowed $250,000 because I sat there and I penciled it out. You could milk cows and never lose money. And that was a Jimmy Carter program. And I sat there, and I'm 23 years old. I built a dairy. I had family land to build it on, raw property. I sat there, I figured it out. I fenced it off. I put in my hay fields. I did it, I figured out everything that needed to go into the deal. And for a year, I made money, and I didn't mind. And I had people, I had family working in there. I had hired hands working in there. I could sneak off and go to rodeo once in a while. I didn't have to be locked down on that bugger just 100% of the time because I was making money. And it was all fine and good. Now, here's the problem. You boys ain't going to remember this, but that's when they had mountains of free cheese they were trying to give away in every metropolitan area all across the United States. This program was supported with hundreds of millions of dollars that it was just costing the federal government. I say the federal government, that's not what it was. It was costing the U.S. taxpayer to prop up this industry. Okay? So after about a year, Reagan cut that out. It was an unsustainable farm program. Okay, at 23, I was too young and dumb to understand that. But when I had this brand new building, and I had 80-something cows, and I kept 65 of them wet, and I was working it. I was doing all this stuff. This was, you had to be real to do this, and then you get the props kicked out from under you. You start paying attention to what makes the world go round. Okay, all of a sudden you owe $250,000 and there's no money coming in. And now what are you going to do? Okay, that's going to make you pay attention. You not only owe this much,
you owe the interest on it.
You owe the interest on it. Okay, you've also gone out into your local community, and you've got tire companies, you've got mechanic companies, you've got feed stores, you've got milling grain. You've got all these local people that you have integrated into your business. Now you owe those people money. All right? You owe your friends money. And you get the stilts kicked out from under you because you're in an unsustainable government program. Now what do? There ain't nothing you can do but put your head down and get out of it. And you start looking for other government write-offs or other government programs to help you get out of it. But then you put your head down, you go to work, and you try to figure out, you just, you don't, for a number of years, you don't put any money in your pocket. You make sure you get your friends, neighbors, family, everybody else paid off. And then you try to take care of that government debt. But it took me, 6 years, 5-6 years to figure it all out and get it out of there. And, I went from, you're owing hundreds of $1,000s and all of a sudden you're turning around, you're a day work cowboy again. Now what? Okay, so you start gaining this wherewithal about what goes on up in Washington. And you start paying attention to this stuff because really, at 23, I asked some of the older dairymen that were mentoring me. And I went, guys, no one saw this coming. And they said, we've never seen anything like this before. And this was back in, Carter was there until 80. I was milking in 80 and milked till 84. And then Reagan, it was one that, because it was an unsustainable program, they spent $100 million on nothing. They were providing money to prop up an industry. Plus, they had all this product they couldn't get rid of because they were giving away all this free cheese. They're going, what in the hell are we doing? And they just cut it out.
Right.
Well, so I mean, but I was a kid. I was 23. And I remember all I had to do was go to the Columbus State Bank, go to the First State Bank, get 2 letters of rejection, go down to the FHA, they'd give me the money. Boom, there you go. You get, it was easy. And okay, I wasn't 100% stupid about it. I did the paperwork. I penciled it out so I knew the numbers would work. They would work as long as I was getting a subsidized price on the milk. When that ended, boop, that was it.
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, we don't ever want to be partners with the government again.
Yeah, well, that might be, the longer this goes on right now, we may be learning that soon again.
Well, I mean, it's exactly right. Okay, what did I do? Through the years, I took that dairy barn, I converted it into a convenience store. I ran that for a few years, wasn't too happy with that. I had a lady come in, offer to take it and make it into a bar. She took it. She ran it for 25 years. It became a hole in the wall. When she retired, I took it back. I turned it into we call it a social club. I put in an indoor bar, outdoor bar, swimming pool, bull riding pen, outdoor dance floor, bandstand, planted palm trees, got a nice lawn, got everything around there, trying to make it nice and make it more of a country club type of place, not just a hole in the wall. And the whole time doing this stuff and, everything's good, everything's legal, everything's fine, but feeling like I'm out of the way, I'm off the beaten path. Nobody is going to ever be able to get to me out here and really affect me. And lo and behold, here comes COVID, and I'm just shut down.
Yeah.
And so much of the stuff I do is based on events. And all of a sudden, we can't have people get together. And I'm like, what the hell? I said, here I am flying under the radar. I've been guiding hunters all my life. I've been working cowboys. I put this little business together, tried to stay as far away from the government as I could, and here they done kicked the props out from under me again. You can't win.
Not with the government. Yeah. Well, and if you've got small business, yeah, you sure can't. Guys, it's not audio only. The Gauge is on YouTube. Every single episode's on YouTube. We got 4K cameras, the best stuff. Check it out on YouTube if you want to see faces. Bright, smiling faces. We don't just use this lighting for nothing. We video it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell. Lots of people are watching the videos, but not a lot of people are subscribing. Please help me. Help us. Help the Gauge. Subscribe on YouTube.
The Texas Historical Shooter Society was the first cowboy action shooting club organized in the state of Texas. This back in '89. And they came out to the place, and we got them all rigged up, fixed up, and got them a spot to shoot out there. And they've been going ever since. Well, they were there for a couple of years, and then they started wanting to have their annual blowout function. The Single Action Shooter Society in California has End of Trail, and there's, I think at that time, I don't know if there was anything else at that time, but this club decided they wanted to have an annual blowout. And so, okay, well, they have had it now. I think this past year was the 29th year. And like I said, they were there for a couple of years until they started doing it. They've had, in 29 years, they've had 1.5 rain days. It's a 4-day event. And in 29 years, they've lost 1.5 days from the rain. Wow. Yeah, I take credit for that.
Yeah.
I don't.
Same story.
Yeah, same story. I don't let it rain. What it is, in all reality, is if you go look at the third weekend in March, and you just say, historically, look at this time of the year, the third weekend in March every year, it's kind of fairly decent weather. That's about all you can say about it.
Right.
So we don't, there's no, it's moderate temperature, everything,
Or at least what's moderate in the Houston area.
Yeah. It's just kind of nice. It's for the most part, it's just good weather. Like I said, in 29, 30 years, they've had 1.5 rain days.
Right. So let's go
right,
180 and transition.
Talk about it. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious about the books, right?
Oh,
so the
books,
first book.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's very interesting, like when you kind of lay out the events of your life, and we got on a politic rant, which we actually do on about every show. I think it's just the nature of what's going on in the world. It's almost impossible not to talk about politics, I think, because we're just drowning in it every day.
Yes, sir.
And what's nice about you is you're highly educated and you know politics of the past, which was very enlightening for me, actually. And I think Ty would agree. I really enjoy that.
All right, guys, this is what I grew up with. And when I started guiding hunters in Montana, I started guiding in the Bob Marshall Wilderness up there on the east front out of Choteau, Montana. Hell, you're within spitting distance of Canada. You're in the country that A.B. Guthrie wrote about on the Way West series that he won the Nobel Pulitzer Prize for. You're in Charlie Russell country. You're in all this country. It's just great and wonderful country. And the politics that we talked about every night in the tent is exactly the same conversations that we had earlier.
Right.
There's not
just during the actual events.
It's during that it was, but what I'm saying is the value of the conversation was the same.
Right.
Except you're in the Bob Marshall Wilderness sitting in a cook tent, or you're sitting beside a fire up on the mountain somewhere, sitting there looking for elk, or you're whatever.
Well, I'd almost say it's more valuable now, right? Because history is so lost on us that they don't teach that necessarily in school. Not the way it should be taught,
the
maybe.
stuff, and we can't blame. I don't blame too much on the schools. When you're talking about public schooling, I'm not going to blame those people too hard. I did have a really serious teacher when I was a senior in high school. She was really good. What I blame it on are the universities that, because the parents have these kids right up until the time they go to university. And you do your damnedest to give them a good, solid background. And then when they go to that university, that's where, I really lay some of the blame. And going back to what we talked about earlier, in the 60s, all this stuff was going on. I say there was sleight of hand with the Great Society. They integrated and they turned right around and resegregated with their social programs. The other thing I would say is what we're seeing going on today is no more than the growth of the Weather Underground. What we had as the Weather Underground in the 60s, where we had these people out here trying to bomb federal buildings, instead of Bill Ayers spending his life in prison, he spent his life teaching in universities. And that type of stuff is the reason that we've got problems now. What is a community organizer? You tell me how you can have a riot and looting and fires and all this stuff happening in Portland, in Seattle, in L.A., and at the same time Chicago and New York, and within a week's time you've got all this stuff going on across the nation. There has to be some organization involved in all this, and that is, to me, that what is it? It's got to be community organizers. That would be just logical. They're all the same ilk. They're all the same mentality. These people all think the same. So, just logically put it all together in your head and look at it and go, okay, well, it's time for law and order, and we need to eliminate this stuff.
It's pretty interesting, though, because if you talk about those metropolitan areas, every single one that you've listed off has a history of 50 to 30 years of, Democratic leadership. So, do you think that's what, if you talk to far right people or even moderate people even now, they would say that it's policy that has done all that.
It is. I don't, okay. I really haven't, me personally, myself, I don't like to speak to something that I haven't personally experienced and been able to put my finger on and drawn a conclusion. I think that's absolutely probably the obvious point that you're correct with that. That these places have been run by leftists for so long, this is what you're going to wind up with. I think that's absolutely right. I think that's right and correct. I think there's more to it than that. I think, I think it's just trends. I think there's things that we need to change about the way we're doing things. Okay. All right. I'm going to go off the reservation here. I'm going to tell you what drives me. The one thing, the biggest, most identifying, most defining thing out there. All right, I'm one of these guys that looks at. I'm stuttering all over the page.
What was it? Is that Crown Royal?
Yeah,
I noticed that bottle was pretty lighter than I left it.
Well, I'm trying. I'll drink the whole damn thing.
Hey, man, that's what we have it.
I'm full growed. Anyhow, abortion. That is my defining deal, because I think, like I said earlier, I was adopted. And so abortion.
Yeah, so that really hits for you.
Yeah. When you can convince a society that murder is just part of okay, it's just, everybody has a right or, to just do that. Boy, I'm going to tell you what, there's something way, way wrong with people. And that is where, you say come back to God, come back to whatever. I don't know what you got to come back to, but boy, you got to come back to something if you think that's okay. You're so far off that, I don't know how you can get a dog to like you. It's the abortion thing separates before we get into wildlife issues, before we get to the Second Amendment, before we get to anything else. If I see somebody go over there and push the button that they're in favor of any type of abortion issues, if they think that there is such a thing as pro-choice, there is no such thing. There is absolutely no such thing as pro-choice. You're either pro-life or pro-death. That's it. You're either alive.
We agree 100% on this.
You're either alive or you're dead. There's no pro-choice. This person, somebody's going to be alive or they're going to be dead. It's an outside entity that thinks they've got a choice. There's no such thing. When you can convince a society that a pro-choice exists, there is something wrong in that society, and it's been like that since 1973.
Margaret Sanger.
All right, and it come on. We have been following this trend. Now, what has created all this upheaval is that from the Great Society, from the 60s till now, we've been drifting so far left. We're at the edge. We're at the edge of the world. We're fixing to fall off.
Well, we've already seen societies fall off of that edge.
Yes, we have.
Time and time again.
Now we got Trump over here, and he ain't just ready to hold on to us and keep us from falling off the edge. He's sitting over here ready to jerk us right back to where we were, when right was right and wrong was wrong.
Be nice if he could say it that way.
I believe you can.
I'm ready to hear it. Don't you know, when you refer to Trump, right, I think he was such a polarizing guy before celebrity or before presidency, right? Everybody loved the guy. on both sides, right? Well, maybe not so much the right, but everybody.
When he was
something to say
when
about
I was
he
going to
was
say probably not after the birtherism with Obama.
when he was just a celebrity, everybody liked him because he's scattering money everywhere. You know, the guy had money, you know, and he did all these philanthropic things. You know, just hear a good story and give somebody money. You know, guy's a billionaire. So, I mean, he hears you've got some kind of a good story you're trying to do right. Hell, he slip you 25, 30,000. He ain't think nothing of it. You know, the boys in Iraq are sitting over there. There ain't enough planes to get them out of there. He sent planes after them, you know. Guy's a philanthropist. And God bless it, we should all be like that. I kind of think people are that way.
You see people help people a lot more than most of us probably think.
Well,
At least in the industries that I'm involved in, you know, I mean, rodeo, and you just see it, right? Where we're in it, and you just see a different type of person, and everybody helps everybody. Like your average city living guy doesn't get that, though.
well, yeah, I suppose. It's rural, you know. Maybe that's what the guys got out of it when they came up to the wilderness. You know, it's the rural deal. You know, I mean, everybody just takes care of everybody, and it's, yeah, you know, maybe it's easier because it's rural and there's not that many people. You know, yeah, you know, when the river comes up, you help your neighbor. You do what you got to do to make sure everybody that you can help gets help. And that's just the rural mentality. I don't know. You know, I'm not sure. You look at the urban mentality, and I don't know. I don't know, because I really
I mean,
try.
Trump's an urban guy.
Yeah, Trump's an urban guy, and I really try to think that people are people, that everybody, you know, everybody always helps everybody. But when you get into this idea that, you know, somehow or another government's going to take care of you, that's where it gets screwed up. Or when you see people that run for office and they get the mentality that somehow they have to take care of everybody. And I've seen this. You go to a city council meeting and the mayor sit up and go, well, we have to take care of everybody's health. And we're standing over there on the side. We go, hey, wait, whoa, time out. No, we don't want you to take care of our health. That's not your job. Right now, we have lost millions of dollars on businesses. We've seen businesses shut down. We've seen, you know, our children not be able to go to school. We've seen all these things because of these mandates. You know, we do not, you know, would you please quit helping? You know,
Tell me about it. Well,
you know.
and it's funny because some of the social implications of like a child not being able to go to school, someone losing a business, lack of socialization, because humans are very social.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to see the effects of that, and they are a lot scarier than COVID-19.
Well, they are. They are. When you look
The suicide rate keeps rising.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's isolationism. It's not social distancing. You know, there's nothing social about it. I think that's become a generalized idea that, you know, social distancing, there's nothing social about it. It's isolationist. It's separating people. It's just another form of dividing people, keeping people apart, keeping, you know, demoralizing people. And, you know, tell you God's honest truth, they're out of luck. They're out of luck. It ain't gonna happen. It's over, because I don't know what you guys are doing up here, but we're going full bore down there at my house. You know, we got bull ridings almost every weekend. We just had a Back to Blue rally. We had a turkey shoot. Texas Outdoor Rider's going to have their event you know what? Look at Abbott's deal. Texas governor's deal. If you go all down to the thing, that thing's shot so full of holes that it's not real. It's not real. We just had a Back to Blue rally down there, and at my club, because I don't call it a bar, I don't call it a beer joint, I call it a club. And, it was a hoot. Boy, I mean, we had, all the kids were in the swimming pool. We had 4 bands. We had a dance. We had a turkey shoot. It was one hell of a party. And, all this other stuff ain't real. The numbers aren't real. And we ain't going to slow down. We're not going to stop. We're not going to slow down. We're going to keep on with it. We've got more events planned. We're bull riding all the time. Everything's outdoors. The whole 9 yards. Everything's outside. And okay, here's another little factor. I remember during the middle of all this, I made a remark to somebody about CDC or whoever it was came up with the notion, Fauci or whatever. They said scientific studies have found out that sunshine and fresh air are good for you. And I said that to somebody, and they freaked out and went, well, how in the hell do you know that's right? And I went, well, I'm just talking to somebody who's so mortally stupid, there's no point in discussing this shit any further. I mean, good Lord, something that we've known from the day we hit the dirt until now, sunshine and fresh air is good for you. And somebody wants to argue about it. And I'm like, oh man, I need to go back to the hills because these people are too stupid to be around.
Well, there are a lot more of them. Now, real quick, because we got off track again, let's talk about the books real quick. I think then it'll be a good time to wrap because I do want to know about the books and kind of the inspiration behind them.
The Lost Rider books. The Lost Rider. Yopon Creek. Okay, I live on Yopon Creek. The Lost Rider is a metaphorical idea, and it's just because we're all a bunch of lost riders. We're out here just trying to do our best, trying to find our way, and sometimes we're lost, and sometimes we get there, but it's a metaphorical thing. And so the Lost Rider of Yopon Creek, well, that's me. I enjoy that. It's kind of an identity thing. And then after that, it's a bunch of stories about growing up on the Post Oak Savannah back in my time, guiding in Montana's Bob Marshall Wilderness, guiding in the Washakie Wilderness in northwestern Wyoming, guiding in Old Mexico, and meeting up with Santa at Christmas, And so I challenge anybody to differentiate fact from fiction with these stories.
It's for sale on Amazon right now, isn't it?
It's on sale on Amazon. There's The Lost Rider of Yopon Creek. There's I've got a smokehouse full of Lost Rider Christmas tales. And it's you want to get a hold of me, I'll send you some of them. And it's 12 years of me and Santa meeting up and just hashing out what went on through the year. And then there's also for the ladies like that book because in between each Christmas story is recipes from outfitters in Montana, Wyoming, and Old Mexico. And, it's recipes. And it's one of those things. I got my daughter to edit those recipes and put them together, categorize them, edit them, fix them all up. And it's a bunch of fun stories, And it seems like the ladies like The Lost Rider at Christmas, and the men like The Lost Rider Tales from Yopon Creek. Tales from the Lost Rider of Yopon Creek. It's a testament. It's everything that we've talked about today. It's a testament. When you're a hunting guide in the wilderness, a lot of times you're also a psychotherapist. You're also taking people off to meet them, meet and greet, meet themselves. It's one time that people get away from their cell phones. They get away from technology. You take someone away from a cell phone for 8 days and just make them be themselves. That's something that needs to happen more often.
Yes, it does.
And as much as you and I sit here, we talk politics all day. We can talk, you want me to talk about hunting regulations, restrictions in Montana, hunting regulations, restrictions in Wyoming, talk about all the different outdoor aspects of everything I've seen, I'd rather teach somebody how to shoe a horse. And I'll tell them a little bit about what I've seen with government stuff while I teach them how to do something pertinent and teach them how to shoe a horse, how to get a horse started, how to break one, how to get, how to pack one. That probably means more to who you are than all the other stuff. If you can get along with a horse, I reckon that means a lot.
For those of us who grew up that way, it's the most important thing. You know what you know about horse lovers? When they talk about them, that's how they react. True horsemen, that's how they react. I come from a family where our entire livelihood was based on performance horses. So that feeling you've got right now is a feeling that I'll have the rest of my life as well.
Yeah, Jesus.
We've had world champion barrel racers on here. They do that talking about their horse too.
Well, yeah. People are people. And everybody pretty much loves critters. And then it becomes hard when you try to explain the ways to take care of critters. And from an outdoor perspective, boy, I'm taking a left turn on you. I hope you're ready. I'm having to do this because you have me all choked up.
Well, we love horses.
Yeah. We're talking about horses. Now I'm taking you back over to the outdoor outdoor aspect.
Hey, I'm
of
ready.
all
Let's
this.
go for it.
All right, the outdoor aspect of this is North American model of conservation. It's been in effect since the 1930s, and what it means is that hunters and fishermen have provided for the conservation and reestablishment of habitat and everything to do with wildlife conservation since the 1930s. It has to do with the Pittman-Roberts Act. It has to do with the Dingell-Voss Act, and it provides for the wildlife that we have now. They brought their species they have brought back, and their species that they're conserving right now. It's all got to do with North American model of conservation. We've been talking a whole lot about right-handed and left-handed politics. All right. With all that, you have to ask, what model of conservation is going on with the National Park Service?
Tell me.
None.
Right down the center?
Right down the center. There's if you go look at the National Park Service and you say, there's less than 10 of national parks that have hunting and fishing in them that take into account wildlife populations and then the conservation measures that relate to sustaining those populations. If you look at what constitutes the model of conservation, hunting and fishing, and project that worldwide, you'll see that Africa is probably the most easiest place to see this. You can go to Africa, you can look at every country in Africa, and you can see who does hunting, who hunts, which country utilizes these models. All right.
Well, Africa's the only reason Africa can thrive at all is because of the conservation and the hunting.
All right, but how many of those countries are banning hunting? And when you see the countries that are banning hunting or banning outsourcing of trophies or any of that stuff, their wildlife populations are going to hell. They're going down. All right. Now, there's an outfit called CITES, CITES. All right. They had a deal they had a conference in Geneva, Switzerland last year. Okay. All the international conservation groups go to that. All right. They discern whether or not there's going to be an ivory ban, whether there's going to be a trophy ban, where those things. All right. So they discern that at this thing. All right. You've got Sierra Club, you've got U.S. Humane Society, you've got Dallas Safari Club, you've got Safari Club International. All these guys go to this thing in Geneva, Switzerland. Okay. All right. They go over there and they argue the points that if you ban this, you've driven it underground. And you have undermined the conservation efforts of those groups in South Africa. All right? I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. This is easy. Dallas Safari Club a few years ago was going to auction off a rhino hunt. All right? Those guys went ballistic. The left-handed guys went ballistic. All right? So they're going to auction off a rhino hunt. The left-handed guys all went, you can't do that. It's on the endangered species list. All right? So back in, what was the executive director's name? I think was Sam Carter. I called him. I called the executive director of Dallas Safari Club. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, I've been all over the internet. I've looked at this. You guys are really taking a lot of heat. And he goes, yes, sir. And I said, am I correct in my thinking that the tag you are auctioning off is for one specific animal. Is that correct?
It always is. They choose the old and weathered animals. I mean, it's really a mercy killing because if you let them get to a certain age, and this is what people don't understand. So I'm actually pretty decently educated on this because of some of the international hunters we have as guests.
Oh, you got
And
it. All right. Now, you got it. I mean, I did this,
Yep.
how many years ago was that? And, nobody knew it.
well, mainstream society doesn't because it completely destroys the argument.
It's the damn birds and the bees. How stupid are people? It's the birds and the bees. I mean, you don't got to be ranch raised to know that old guys ain't gonna knock them out as young guys.
Well,
are.
yeah, and if you look at a populace, let's use lions for example, because anytime somebody shoots a lion, there's always a huge uproar over this, right? There's a set number of lions that can be killed each year. The cost to shoot that lion is astronomical, and that goes right into conservation. It goes into the indigenous tribes' pockets. I mean, it helps fuel their economy. It's the number one thing. And the number one thing that prevents poaching in Africa is international hunters. Period.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but your average person who sees somebody posing with a lion or a leopard on Facebook freaks out, doesn't understand any of that.
All right. So what happened? What happened that time? DSC thought they were going to raise $1 million for rhino conservation. They raised $350,000, $650,000 off. They lost. You can say they're $650 because the left thinking that somehow or another they were doing good. When that tag was for one specific animal, and so they, you would have to say the anti-hunting faction cost them $650,000 and significantly diminished the impact of rhino conservation in Africa.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you look at it from just a generalist point of view, I mean, you're literally cutting off your hand to spite your face because you think you're a moral high ground with something you have no understanding on whatsoever. So that's what's interesting about it, because when they do these auction hunts for these endangered species, whether it's a rhino, an elephant, a giraffe, specific lions, I mean, they're taking an old male, it's never a female, that can no longer reproduce. And
stops the younger bulls from.
Correct. And when he gets to the point where he's so worn down, he's going to have a terrible death. Something's going to rip him from one end to the other slowly, and it's going to be brutal.
Well, and okay, I'll give you another secret. They ain't stopped doing that. I mean, these guys are, South Africa and all those guys, they're still auctioning these things off, but it's pretty.
Well, they'll never stop. It's a
yeah. I mean, they have to do it, but they're just more quiet. They're more quiet about auctioning off these tags, because the people are people over here are just too damn stupid to not they turn around, bend over. I don't know how to get there. I don't know how you stick your head up your butt that far, but that's what they do. And
it's just the lack of education, right? I mean, when you're dealing with things like that, people get so hyper emotional about animals, much like you did with horses, like I do all the time, and they think that they're helping save an animal by doing that. Now, if you talk to guides in Africa or people who put on these hunts, they'll tell you that they didn't start having these problems at the level that they do until the emergence of social media, because it's in everybody's face now. So it's an interesting thing now, because they just didn't have these problems 12 years ago, 13 years ago at the same level they do now.
It's reality.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have the face of reality. When it comes to horses, I've had to shoot a few. I get it.
Yeah.
So, but this other deal, when it comes to horses, I had to shoot a few through the years, and it's one of those things that chokes you up, But you do it because they're your buddy.
Because you don't want to see him suffer. Yeah.
Yeah. And this deal is just simple math. This is just simple math. And I tried to explain it, to somebody one time. They were talking about elephants in Africa. And I said, well, what if you go down to Whole Foods tomorrow and it ain't there? Because the elephants wiped it out. And they said they'd be there in 2 weeks and you can come get groceries. And you go back in 2 weeks and you find out that when you went down there to get your groceries, it ain't there. Because 2 weeks later, the elephants came in and wiped it out again. And I said, get some wherewithal to how these folks in Africa feel. And it's very difficult for people in a modern society to understand what people live with
in a third world country.
In a third world country. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because they hate elephants more than they hate lions.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Yeah, if you know anybody from an indigenous tribe in Africa, or if you've had a chance to talk to them, they will tell you it's not lions, it's not hyenas, it's not wild dogs, it's not crocodiles, it's elephants.
Right. They eat they eat everything that they could have. What I do when I see these things pop up and I hear these controversies and stuff, I ask people that I know are left-handed to begin with, and I said, have you considered the position of the conservationists in Africa that are dealing with the problem? I said, have you considered the people who are doing the work before you projected your opinion on everything else? Or did you just accept what someone told you? Why are you not listening to the people who are dealing with the problem?
Because they don't know that that's a problem. They look at a picture.
Well,
white lady with a dead, you name the African animal. White man with a dead, whomever. But yeah, that's the end of this topic, right? Because every single thing kind of circles back to some political view that nobody wants to educate themselves on, right? Whether it be a socioeconomical issue, a conservation issue, a tire shoe issue. Like, it all roots back to nobody wants to educate themselves nowadays.
All right, it's okay. You want to get into the heart of what I've been involved in. You talk about wolves in the Rocky Mountains. You talk about grizzlies in the Rocky Mountains, up in the wilderness areas, up in the ranch country, all this stuff. And why don't people care? This is my biggest deal. Why don't people care about the people who are being impacted? That's what, for the life of me, I cannot understand. Why don't people care about the ranchers who are impacted? Why don't they care about the outfitters that are impacted by the wolf issue, by the grizzly issue?
It's unseen, right? So you take the average human's view of bear, teddy bear, wolf, puppy, you name it. Your average human doesn't actually understand the dangers that large populations of wolves have on sheep populations, on dropping calves, on deer and elk populations as a whole. Because one thing about wolves that you find is wolves kill to kill. They will kill all day long if they're able to. They're a very dangerous creature.
All right, let's okay. Man, I can go all over the goddamn spectrum with this. Why don't people care? Yes. However, we cannot sit around and say, I don't care if you listen to NPR, PBS, I don't care who you listen to, we're going to teach these wolves how not to impact livestock. We're going to, nah, all that ignorant, just totally asinine theology. Wolves have been in this world as long as man has. We have data from all over the world about human wolf contact, wolf contact livestock, the whole 9 yards. It's all there, and they did it anyway. You know, it's a control thing again. It's just a control thing. When you talk about wolves in the northern Rocky Mountains, it was a control thing. They knew better. They knew, the guys who were up there were just front, come and take it, boys, because everybody knew better. We had all the data in the world, the NPR, the PBS, all the government agencies that put out all the false information and all the wishy-washy stuff about we hope it don't happen. We're going to teach these wolves how to not eat livestock and not eat people or whatever. Good Lord, go away. This has been going on since the beginning of time. So, and you can go over and over and over again with how many different issues. It's all the same thing over and over. It is,
yeah. It's probably a good place to end it, right? We'll leave people with the image of wolves eating people. I don't know about you, but that's my nightmare.
Oh, jeez.
You see some of those wolves that they pull out of Idaho, and they could definitely do it.
Well, they're big enough. They're big enough. I think, I trust people. I trust people. I like to believe that people are people, no matter who you are, where you are, or what you're doing. I really like to believe that.
I like to believe it too, and I hope we get back to that mindset as a whole.
Well, I think we'll get there.
I think we will.
We'll keep trying if that's what we want, and we'll keep trying at it. We'll get there. I think. I ain't sure how, but we'll keep trying. One of the things we didn't talk about was the writing, the real writing aspects of this stuff. And if you look back, the things that drew me into all this with A.B. Guthrie and Robert Ruick, and Hemingway and all these guys. If you look back, and they had the right mindset. People are people, and it was all very humanistic, and
especially Hemingway. Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, Ruick was always called the poor man's Hemingway. And those guys, if you look at what they wrote, there was a great aspect of outdoor writing. Jack London wrote Call of the Wild and White Fang. Ruick wrote his great series that was in Field and Stream with The Old Man and the Boy. He had novels that were produced into movies. Hemingway, of course, he was Hemingway, Old Man in the Sea, and all the stuff he wrote that was, basically outdoor stuff. And it was all about the humanistic people being people. And I believe in that. I have to. I have to believe in that.
I mean, I truly think now more than ever, I think we all have to believe in that. And I think it's important if you raise children in this modern world to try to pass that on to them so we don't lose it.
You do. You have to. And how do you do that? Because it's all about individual responsibility. Individual responsibility, accountability, and to look off into the wilderness, look off into the great blue, whatever. and know that you are your own person. Whether you're a bronc rider, a bull rider, that's one of the most, that's the whole thing about rodeo is for a little while, it's just you. That's it. It's just you. And that horse you've trained, or you and that bronc, you and that bull, you and whatever. That's the whole thing about rodeo. It's so damn individualistic. It's not a team sport like football or basketball or baseball or any of that stuff. It is so individualistic, and it's just about how good a man you are. And and that's what we do. It's that is the part about being an individual and being free. Being free. That's the thing that we have to try to explain to our youth. Try to explain to the kids what it means to be free, because I'm not sure that everybody knows what that means anymore.
No. In fact, the definition of freedom is completely different to the newest generation, I think.
I don't want to wake up every morning and have to think about what I'm going to do today. Can I write it off, or do I have to report it? Or am I going to go create a business that I have to get it permitted, or can I just go do it? What's free? The only time I'm free is when I go, and I think that's one reason why we still love cowboys so much, is because for a little while you're horseback and you're free.
One of the oldest forms of that freedom.
Yeah, we got to cut this off. You guys are getting tired. I can do this all night. You give me another drink, Lord knows where we'll go.
We ran out of SD cards is the only place we go. This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content by Cassie Emerson. Our theme song is by Shay Ashshire and the Night Howlers. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.